Let's break down tariffs. What are they really? Why do governments use them? And what's the real impact on you and me? These are crucial questions in today's interconnected world where trade policies can have far-reaching consequences. Tariffs are basically taxes on imported goods. They're a levy imposed by a government on products coming in from other countries. Think of them as an entrance fee for products coming into a country. This fee is added to the price of the imported item, making it more expensive for domestic buyers. Governments use tariffs to protect local industries. It's a way to give domestic businesses a leg up against foreign competition. For example, if cheaper teapots flood in from abroad, potentially undercutting local producers, a tariff makes them pricier, giving local teapots a fighting chance. This allows local businesses to maintain their market share and continue operating. Sometimes tariffs are used to raise government revenue, providing funds for public services and infrastructure projects. But more often, they're a bargaining chip in trade disputes. They become a tool to influence international trade relations. Leaders might slap tariffs on foreign goods, signaling their displeasure with another country's policies. To pressure other countries into negotiating or changing their trade practices. It's a way to level the playing field, or at least attempt to. But tariffs don't just affect governments. Their impact is much broader. They ripple through the whole economy, affecting businesses, consumers, and international relations. Businesses importing goods pay more, increasing their operational costs and potentially impacting their profitability. And those costs often get passed on to consumers, leading to higher prices at the checkout. Suddenly, your favorite imported cheese, the one you always treat yourself to, or phone costs more. Everyday items become less affordable. And if the other country retaliates with tariffs of their own, imposing similar taxes on your country's exports, you've got a trade war with escalating tariffs and strained international relations. Nobody really wins those. Trade wars lead to economic instability and uncertainty for everyone involved. Tariffs can disrupt global supply chains, making it harder for businesses to source materials and deliver products efficiently, raise prices and even slow economic growth, impacting overall prosperity and job creation. The real cost often lands on everyday people who feel the pinch of higher prices and reduced purchasing power. Not just politicians or big companies, it's the average consumer who ultimately bears the burden. So while tariffs might sound like a tool for fairness, designed to protect local industries and level the playing field, they can quickly spiral into a lose-lose situation, creating more problems than they solve. The tariff game is a risky one, with unpredictable outcomes and potential for unintended consequences. With consequences far beyond the negotiating table, impacting global trade, economic stability, and international relations. Understanding tariffs is key to understanding the global economy's ups and downs, and how international trade policies affect our daily lives. Enter Donald Trump, who's never shied away from making tariffs headline news. In May 2025, he threatened a massive 50% tariff on all EU goods, a huge leap from the previously discussed 20%. The US Treasury Secretary said this was meant to light a fire under stalled trade talks. The timing, right before a major G7 summit, was no accident. This echoes the US-China trade war, where tit-for-tat tariffs caused global headaches. The message, the US is ready to use tariffs to force the EU back to the negotiating table. Is this a real threat or just tough talk? Either way, markets and governments are on edge. The world is bracing for what comes next. The sudden threat of a 50% tariff, seemingly out of nowhere, sent immediate shockwaves through global markets. A jolt of pure, unadulterated fear rippled across trading floors worldwide. Stocks dipped sharply, erasing billions in value in a matter of hours. Currencies wobbled precariously, as investors scrambled to reevaluate their positions in a suddenly volatile landscape, and anxiety spiked to levels not seen in years. The financial world held its collective breath. Businesses on both sides of the Atlantic, from small startups to multinational corporations, scrambled to assess the potential fallout, poring over spreadsheets and market analyses in a desperate attempt to understand the implications. But many in the EU and Japan, seasoned veterans of international trade negotiations, suspect the US might be bluffing, engaging in a high-stakes game of poker on the world stage, recalling past threats that ultimately fizzled out, amounting to little more than empty rhetoric. Still, the EU isn't taking any chances. They're not willing to gamble with their economic future. They've issued a stern warning, stating clearly that they'll retaliate with their own tariffs if needed, escalating the conflict. This tit-for-tat escalation, this dangerous game of brinkmanship is exactly what economists fear, a slippery slope towards a global trade war. Countries like Japan and Taiwan, heavily reliant on international trade, are watching closely, monitoring every development with intense scrutiny, trying desperately to avoid getting caught in the crossfire, seeking to protect their own economies from the impending storm. The upcoming G7 summit now has a new, heightened urgency. The stakes have never been higher. How to respond collectively to the US's increasingly aggressive stance, and whether a united front can be forged. The risk of a full-blown trade war is undeniably real, a dark cloud looming over the global economy, and everyone's preparing for the worst, bracing themselves for potential economic hardship and disruption. Even if the tariffs don't ultimately materialize, if cooler heads prevail and a compromise is reached, the uncertainty alone is already rattling global confidence, casting a long shadow over investment decisions and economic forecasts. The world is holding its breath, waiting to see what the next move will be in this high-stakes game of global economics. Tariffs aren't just numbers on paper, they disrupt real-world supply chains. Companies that once relied on global networks are now rethinking everything, moving production closer to home or to friendly countries. This shift means higher costs and less efficiency, at least for now. Ultimately, consumers pay the price. Electronics, clothes, and food all get more expensive. Tariffs can fuel inflation, hitting lower-income families hardest. Prolonged trade disputes slow economic growth as businesses invest less and trade volumes shrink. Trust between countries erodes, making it harder to tackle global challenges together. The ripple effects are hard to reverse once they start. Tariffs may seem like a quick fix, but they often create long-term headaches. The global economy becomes more fragile with every new barrier. Everyone feels the impact, whether they realize it or not. Developing countries are hit hardest by tariffs. They rely on exports to grow, and new barriers can devastate their industries. When tariffs make their goods uncompetitive, jobs and opportunities vanish. Tariffs can trap these nations in cycles of poverty, cutting off access to global markets. Startups and small businesses also struggle. They can't absorb sudden cost hikes or navigate unpredictable rules. Uncertainty makes it tough for them to plan, invest, or attract funding. Many are forced to pivot or scale back, stifling innovation and growth. The result? Big companies get stronger, while new ideas struggle to survive. Tariffs don't just hurt countries, they stifle the next generation of entrepreneurs. The imposition of tariffs, while intended to protect domestic industries, casts a long shadow across various sectors. Some industries, deeply intertwined with global commerce, feel the sting of these tariffs far more acutely than others. The impact isn't uniform. It's a complex web of consequences. Tech companies, particularly those involved in electronics and hardware, with their intricate and globally dispersed supply chains, are among the most vulnerable. These supply chains often span multiple countries, each specializing in a specific component or assembly process. As a result, they face significant delays in receiving crucial components, experience higher costs due to increased import duties, and even encounter shortages of essential materials, disrupting production schedules and impacting product availability. The clean energy sector, a beacon of hope in the fight against climate change, solar panels, wind turbines, and the batteries that power electric vehicles, is also heavily reliant on international trade for its components and materials. The manufacturing of these technologies often relies on specialized parts sourced from various countries, so tariffs can inadvertently slow down the transition to renewable energy sources, hindering efforts to combat climate change and promote sustainable development. It's a contradiction. A perplexing paradox. Governments around the world are actively pushing for the adoption of green technologies and sustainable practices, but the imposition of tariffs on imported components makes these technologies more expensive, potentially hindering their widespread adoption and slowing down progress towards a greener future. Biotech, a sector driven by innovation and scientific breakthroughs too, depends heavily on global collaboration and the import of specialized equipment, reagents, and other essential laboratory supplies. Tariffs on these imports can significantly slow down the pace of research and development and substantially raise the overall costs of conducting scientific investigations, but they're also prompting some forward-thinking firms and organizations to reevaluate their supply chains and invest in establishing local production facilities, aiming to reduce their reliance on international trade. Across these diverse sectors, from technology to renewable energy and biotechnology, companies are actively rethinking their business strategies, adapting to the new realities of global trade and seeking ways to mitigate the risks associated with tariffs and trade disruptions. They are carefully weighing the potential costs and benefits of localizing their production processes against the ever-present risk of future trade shocks, geopolitical instability, and disruptions to global supply chains. The push for greater supply chain resilience is a tangible and urgent priority for many businesses, but it inevitably comes at a price, requiring significant investments in new infrastructure, equipment, and workforce training. The established rules of global trade are undergoing a period of significant transformation, and the task of long-term strategic planning has become more challenging and complex than ever before, requiring businesses to navigate a landscape of uncertainty and volatility. The future of innovation, technological progress, and economic growth hangs delicately in the balance, dependent on the choices we make today. Where does the UK fit in? Thanks to its own trade deals, it's somewhat shielded from direct US-EU tariff crossfire. But no country is truly immune. A US-EU trade war would send shockwaves through the global economy. If the US and EU slow down, demand for British goods could drop, and supply chains could still be disrupted. Investor confidence would take a hit, making growth and job creation harder. The UK might avoid the first punch, but it can't dodge the aftershocks. Stability and predictability are key for the British economy, and both are at risk. The government is watching closely, hoping for de-escalation, but preparing for turbulence. In a globalized world, no one stands alone. Experts like finance professor Jeep Klein say Trump's tariffs have ramped up uncertainty and disruption. Constantly changing trade rules make it hard for businesses to plan and invest. Many economists argue the US should focus on innovation and fair trade agreements, not blunt force tariffs. If the 50% tariffs go ahead, expect more market volatility, higher prices, and slower growth. International relations would get even more strained, risking a fractured global order. The G7 summit is a crucial moment. Will leaders pull back from the brink or double down? The world is watching, hoping for dialogue over confrontation. Even the threat of tariffs is shaping investment and trade decisions right now. The stakes couldn't be higher. The tariff saga proves the global economy is deeply interconnected. A shock in one place ripples everywhere. Tariffs may seem like a quick fix, but they often backfire, hurting everyone involved. The dream of global trade is about mutual benefit, innovation, and choice. Aggressive tariffs create barriers and spark retaliation, leading to lose-lose outcomes. Businesses, countries, and consumers all need stability and fair rules to thrive. The best path forward is cooperation, not confrontation. Smart, fair trade policies build bridges, not walls. Learning from past disruptions is key to a healthier global economy. In the end, everyone wins when the rules are clear and the game is fair.